Hey everyone, it is Eric, it is Nick. We are wearing our Yomiuri Giants hats because, I don't know why I said because, I already f***ed that up. Hey everybody, it is Eric, it is Nick. We are back from Halloween Hooptiefest in New Hampshire, and this year's race had everything. It had sun, it had rain, it had mass holes, it had babies in pumpkins. The race was near Halloween, so obviously lots of Halloween themes were present. So you'd think for New England in the fall we'd be treated to idyllic fall scenes, changing leaves, warm chowder. What did we get? We got Jay Lamb provocatively carved into a pumpkin and a rat pinata.
Now, as you're watching these videos, you might be thinking to yourself, what's scarier than racing Saabs?
I don't know.
Saabs and Lemons have a lot of history, not necessarily a great history. 3 teams showed up with Saabs this weekend. First, we had Canadian Ultimate Motorsports and their Saab 9000 Turbo. They came all the way down from Montreal to be at this race. They dressed as Canadian Air Force, complete with a Spitfire livery. Did Canada have Spitfires? I don't know. They were rookies and they knew very little about their car, and Judge Brett told the team captain,
You chose poorly.
This car boiled every fluid on board out of it after like the first 15 minutes of racing. Note to rookies, maybe upgrade your brake fluid.
Next up is the Saab 900 of Saab, and they thought that their car was bad enough it should be in C. The judges said, it's a B car. They somehow negotiated for C with penalty laps and blew up the motor before they could work off those negative laps. No problem, they had a backup and it had only been sitting for 35 years. It went predictably.
And the third and final Saab was the 9.5 wagon of the ironically named Futility Motorsports. I say ironic because it ran great. So you need a great crew of judges and penalty enforcers to keep Northeast drivers in check, and we did. We had Judge Brett from Australia or whatever, and we had Judge Andy from Cleveland or whatever, and last but not least, we had Judge Janice from Connecticut.
The judges had some great penalties, as they usually do, including a sex education penalty. And Andy brought us the Tower of Hanoi penalty, which is a classic math problem / math game. It's the kind of penalty that's perfect for engineers because they feel compelled to solve it. Now, we don't condone cheating when it comes to penalties, but if you just say you did it after like 45 minutes, we're probably gonna believe you next time, guys.
In all these years of doing Lemons, we've had only one team ever bring us a Subaru Brat, and everybody has been waiting for that loop to be closed. How do you close it? You show up with the first ever Subaru Baja. This was the Baja Banditos, and they had a great theme that was a mashup of Baja California, the Baja 1000, and Baja Blast Mountain Dew.
Not new, but actually very old, was the old homosexual Chevy Malibu. This car was built in Tennessee by a bunch of nuclear engineers at Oak Ridge. That car disappeared from Lemons about 10 years ago. These guys found it, trucked it to the Northeast, and raced it again briefly before the transmission exploded, but we can't wait to see this thing back on the track.
After taking a couple of years off, we saw the return of the Pride Boys. This is one of the legendary teams in terms of great themes. They were the game of Crumple Zones, they were Britney Spears, they were 50 Shades of AAA, they were Bill Cosby. They were back with their rainbow-themed Acura. They drove that thing to a 5th place overall finish. Just great team, great people, great themes, and apparently good at racing.
We do like to shame teams with bad themes, so we started making these bad theme stencils. I made this one and shipped it to New England for use. It is the tomato plus clam chowder. It turns out putting tomatoes in clam chowder is actually a misdemeanor in Massachusetts, and on the Lemons Rally just a couple months before this, we made teams in Massachusetts break the law by putting tomato in their clam chowder.
Guilty!
Luckily, we didn't need the bad theme stencil very much. There were many great themes at this race. We will start with one of my favorite Lemons car, which is the Autobahn Cruisemobile Ford Focus that looks like an amazing stage rally car. That is because it was the show car for the 1999 Ford Focus World Rally Championship team, but it has no working rally gear on the car. It is a show car, it's all just for show, and instead it has the Europe-only 1.4 liter engine that makes about 90 horsepower. It was butt-ass slow. Looks awesome.
Team Slotus was there. Now, this is a US-based Miata, but most of the drivers are arrive-and drives from the UK, including automotive journalist Rich Duesberg. They rethemed this Miata as a Lotus, and during BS, they used a Ouija board to summon deceased famous race car drivers from the dead, and each of the drivers were playing those roles, and it was hella sweet.
We also had Mean and the Mechanics, always a good theme. They were scarecrows this year, and the team captain, his name is Dick Wood.
The United Angels were back after their Halloween Meets Gasoline Best Theme Award at Thompson. There they were the Knights of the Round Table. This time they rethemed to the Monty Python Knights Who Say Knee.
Then when you have found this shrubbery, you must cut down the mightiest tree in the forest with this Tommy gun!
The theme of the Folly from Mount Holly is really and truly at its root a bad car. That is the theme. They won Heroic Fix last year at New Hampshire, but this year they've solved all their problems.
Now, we also had 30 minutes or less with their VW Golf and Toy Yoda with a Toyota MR2 Spider. These are actually the same team, but they have two completely different cars and two completely different teams. The Golf is a Domino's delivery car, which is awesome. It has active aero now. And the MR2 is a Mandalorian, Rogue One, Clone Wars. You know, I'm actually behind on my Star Wars spin-offs. It could be Skeleton Crew, could be Lando, could be Young Jedi Adventures, it could be a droid story, it could be Star Wars Resistance, it could be Andor.
One of those great under-the-radar teams is the Underpowered Rangers, and their BMW. It's hammered, it's ugly, and everything inside the car is actually extra awesome.
Team Hesh was back in their Ford Escort. If you've been following their history, they started out as Heshers, heavy metal fans. Then they rethemed to a taxi, and now they've rethemed to a Wheel of Cheese.
Wheel of Cheese? How'd you do that? Actually, I'm not even mad.
Quick shout out to Waka Motorsports. They rebuilt their engine after blowing up at NJMP, and their Slows theme looks great.
Idiots Avanti bought an old Nissan 300ZX Lemons car, solved all the hood latch problems.
Valve Tap Racing was back with their two-car team, two Chrysler. This and that.
As usual, we had a potluck on Saturday night, and 3 Pedal Mafia, as usual, hosted a monster of a potluck. They also came with a great theme, as we expect from them, that included what I think was supposed to be hot mayonnaise, which is the grossest phrase in the English language, and their other car was themed after their late friend Aaron Lineman, who famously flipped everybody the bird.
At this race, we had our very first Scion FRS, $500 my ass. Now, a car like this, it's all race prepared and everything. And at certain points, clearly, since it's dozens of laps ahead, they have to take breaks to let everybody else catch up.
Here are your class winners.
You may not be surprised that in Maine, the Sasquatch legend is alive and well. This team, Fast Squatch Racing, paid homage to that, and they won the Yokohama Road Mangler Cup for racing on Yokohamas.
Heroic Fix went to Brooklyn Bomb Squad and their red Volkswagen GTI. Now, usually they're blowing up head gaskets, oil lines, transmissions, you name it. They usually drive pretty well. Not this weekend. This time they fixed everything with a hammer because their driving sucked. Hit a wall? Hammer. Hit another red Volkswagen? Hammer. Hit another wall? Hammer. Hittites? Hammer. Designated hitter? Hammer. Hit single?
Stop. Hammer time.
Judge's choice went to the Vermonsters and their Audi A4. Before we get into their story, what are the 3 greatest motorsports you can watch on YouTube? After Lemons, of course.
So, John Cleland's sandwich between the 2 BMWs. I'm going for first, said John Cleland.
So Spectators is you bring your street car and you race some other jamoke who also brought their street car. One of the Vermonsters is a regular competitor in Spectator Drags, and his wife, Jen, she's a breast cancer survivor. She's like, I gotta get out on track too. So she got sent to racing school. She wanted to do more. Lemons was the obvious next step. Now this car showed up without a theme. We gave them a hard time about it, and they slowly themed the car throughout the weekend. They also slowly destroyed the car throughout the weekend. And Jen pushed the team to fix the car every time it broke. She's gone through a bunch of challenges. None of this stuff phases her at all. They got the car back out on track. The judges loved it. It was one of those experiences that showed what you can do when you put your mind to it. We love seeing it, and we can't wait to see this team again next season.
Our event-specific trophy went to the Cosmonauts in their Camry-swapped Toyota MR2. Now, these guys have been a favorite of ours for many years. They're always having fun, no matter what's going wrong with the car, and that's usually a lot. They're super under their radar with their driving. Again, that's no small feat in New England, and they're long overdue for some recognition, so we gave this Massachusetts-based team the Big Chowda Energy Trophy. Well done.
Organizer's choice went to Old English Racing and their 79 Spitfire. Now this car falls into the category of looks pretty sporty, not very fast. They're from Long Island, and this car used to be a race car, but it showed up here running on 2 cylinders and generally crapping up the joint. They took advice from veteran Lemons teams who know that this car was built by trolls with hammers in a dimly lit English warehouse. They said you have to get yourself into that mind state to finish this car. So they did. They took some time off to have a full English breakfast, start a soccer hooligan riot, and colonize some things. And once they had done all that, they were inspired. They fixed the car, it got back on track, it ran some fast for a Spitfire laps, and they won the organizer's choice.
Halloween Meets Gasoline went to Deutsche Bag Racing, and what could come better after a Spitfire but a Revolutionary War theme with Patriots, with Chowda, with a drummer, with a flute, with the OG Tea Party. That was spectacular. It was all weekend with the drums following everybody around, tapping on the drums. They had their own awesome pit vehicle that fell into the theme. So well done. The TDI did TDI things, but really the theme, money.
Index of effluency, this is the Cheese Bowl Enterprises TeDrive Ford Tempo. Now what's a TeDrive? Basically it's a transverse engine, but the output to the drivetrain comes out of the middle of the engine. Alright, despite this being possibly the dumbest idea ever, Ford spent some R&D time testing a TeDrive setup in the 80s using a straight 8 put into a Thunderbird and also a Tempo.
The photo of that inline 8 Tempo was one of those early Jalopnik stories that the famous Judge Phil wrote about like 15 years ago. Now, in the last couple years, Cheese Bowl Enterprises found the filed patents for the TeDrive to see if they could make it themselves, and the answer was no! As it happens, however, Dave and Greg from Cheese Bolt are motorcycle guys, and they knew where they could find oodles of cheap Suzuki Bandit 1200s, so why not make a double engine with the TeDrive-ish setup in their Ford Tempo? Flawless plan.
There's way too much to talk about here on this car. We're gonna do a full Lemons World episode on this setup, but suffice it to say, it's a twin engine, twin motorcycle, twin 4-cylinder, transverse TeDrive setup using a Ford Tempo with a Ford Tempo transmission.
To be coaxed out of the pits, they had to put it in drive, and it idled at an ear-piercing 5,000 RPMs everywhere it went. We figured this would last like 2 laps before blowing up, and the team took bets and wrote on the car how many laps everybody thought it would do. It outlasted every single one of them, and once they finally gave it full power, it was passing Lexus SC400s and BMW 3 Series down the straight. We don't know why everybody isn't building one of these. Build one of these. Build another one. Build 10 of them.
As we've seen many times before, the kind of team that builds something incredible, they don't really need a theme, but they do one anyway. They showed up at the race dressed as Ford engineers, and before the race, they filmed their own Ford boardroom theater.
Oh, wow. Wait a minute.
The TeDrive Tempo didn't run entirely without issues. There were some heating problems, but at the end of the day, it managed to outlast nearly half the field, and it actually worked. The whole crazy idea worked. This was soup to nuts, one of the absolute greatest Lemons performances of all time, and as such, we gave it the very rare second IOE for one car. So well done, Cheesebolt Enterprises. And that'll bring us to Lemons in a Nutshell.
Hey, we share a birthday.
Train wreck.
Every second you don't subscribe or watch one of these videos, another Vega is sent to the crusher. Won't you help us save Classic?